Hello and welcome to Foreigndesk on Benue Television. I am Susan Ayo. The headlines. Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces agrees to United States-mediated talks on Sudan war. Germany outlaws religious organization accused of propagating extremism. Taiwan closes office as it braces for powerful typhoon. And the news in details. Leader of Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF, Mohamed Dagalo, on Wednesday said his group is ready to participate in the United States-mediated ceasefire talks between the warring sides. Recall that the U.S. on Tuesday invited the RSF and Sudanese army to meet for talks in Switzerland on August 14, 2024, as efforts to end the conflict mount. The U.S. announced that the negotiations will be co-hosted by Saudi Arabia and included the African Union, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Nations as observers. In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the talks in Switzerland aim to reach a nationwide cessation of violence, enabling humanitarian access to all those in need, and develop a robust monitoring and verification mechanism to ensure implementation of any agreement. Sudan's army, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is yet to respond to the invitation. Blinken said Washington remains committed to working with partners to end the devastating war. Direct talks in Saudi Arabia last year between the RSF and the army produced only agreements for temporary truces, which are quickly violated and rapidly filed to end the war. Subsequent mediation attempts have failed to get the warring sides into the same room, as both vied for the tactical advantage on the ground. Indirect talks held earlier this month in Geneva by United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres' personal envoys were called on encouraging first step by the UN. The brutal war between the RSF and the military government has raged in Sudan since April 2023. According to the United Nations, tens of thousands of people have been killed and almost 10 million displaced amid reports of numerous war crimes by both sides and humanitarian crisis. Germany has outlawed a Muslim religious organization it accused of propagating extremism and supporting Iran and Hezbollah. The Federal Ministry of the Interior and Community announced the ban on the Islamic Center Hamburg IZH and its national affiliates on Wednesday, calling its mission anti-constitutional. In a statement, Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said IZH promotes an Islamist extremist totalitarian ideology in Germany. Faeser claimed that the group and its sub-organizations support Hezbollah and spread aggressive anti-Semitism. Germany outlawed the armed Lebanese group in 2020, designating it a terrorist organization. Her ministry also alleged the group acts as the direct representatives of Iran's supreme leader and works in the interest of establishing an Islamic revolution in Germany outside of the free and democratic constitutional system. The ban comes after German authorities raided 55 properties linked to the group last November, during which police seized material that showed the group was operating in a highly conspiratorial manner and trying to conceal its political aims. Due to the ban, 4 Shia Muslim mosques in Germany will be closed, while IZH's assets have been confiscated. Faeser stressed that the group was not targeted on religious groups and that the Shia Muslims are free to practice their faith. The IZH, which runs the mosques in Hamburg, has long been under observation by Germany's domestic intelligence agency. The group said ahead of the last year's raid that it condemns every form of violence and extremism and has always advocated peace, tolerance, and interreligious dialogue. One of Germany's main religion airports had a halt flight after the climate activities protesters glued themselves to the tarmac. The Belgian-born airport said that unauthorized people gained access to the airfield, leading to all flight operations being suspended as police moved in. A number of inbound flights were diverted to other nearby airports before police said they had completed their operations. The Belgian-born airport urged passengers to check with their airlines or tour operators for updates. The activist group Last Generation said 5 people had glued themselves to the tarmac and published pictures of members with his hand glued to the taxiway. Last Generation said it had wanted the German government to pursue a global agreement to exit oil, gas and coal by 2030. The group said similar peaceful civil protests at airports were planned across Europe and Northern America. In Finland, protesters were pictured blocking security gates at Helsinki, Vata airport, and activist group All Kills, and said 5 of the 8 protesters had been intercepted at Barcelonian El Prat airport. Cologne-Bonn is Germany's 6th busiest airport behind Hamburg, Berlin, Brandenburg, Munich and Frankfurt. In May, Munich airport was forced to shut for 2 hours after 6 climate protesters glued themselves to a runway. 8 people were arrested, but the disrupt led to 11 flights being diverted and 60 cancellations. In the aftermath, Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said security measures at Munich airport would be reviewed. French President Emmanuel Macron has said he won't name a new government until after the end of the Paris Olympics. This comes after the new Popular Front's NFP, a left-wing coalition that makes up the largest group in France parliamentary after recent elections, but forward a civil servant, Lucie Cartet, as the candidate for Prime Minister. Responding to the proposal, Macron said that to make a new appointment before mid-August would create disorder. Left-wing politicians have accused him of trying to cancel the result of the legislative elections. The Olympics gets underway with an opening ceremony in central Paris on Friday and will conclude on August 11, 2024. Macron accepted the resignation of Prime Minister Gabriel Attal following losses for their centrist party in parliamentary election that concluded at the start of July. Under the French system, the president traditionally appoints a prime minister who is able to command a majority in the National Assembly. No party now has a majority, but the NFP controls at least 182 of 577 seats, putting it in the strongest position to propose a candidate. After a week of negotiation and just an hour before Macron was due to grant a television interview, the group put forward Cartet, citing her record of work to defend public service. Ms. Cartet is a 37-year-old economist and civil servant who currently works as Director of Finance and Purchasing for the city of Paris. She has no background in party politics. The choice is unusual as the Prime Minister is usually a serving member of the National Assembly. You're watching Foreigndesk on Benue Television. Let's take a quick break. Stay with us. Glad to have you back. Aviation officials say a passenger plane has crashed and caught fire shortly after taking off from Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, killing 18 people. The Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal said in a statement that the pilot was the only survivor of Wednesday's crash and was being treated in hospital. 19 people were on the test flight conducted by the domestic carrier Saurya Airlines, including technical staff members and 2 crew members. The incident took place right after the 11 a.m. local time takeoff of the 50-seat Bombardier CRJ-200. The plane then turned right and crashed into the eastern section of the airport. It was way to the resort town of the Pokhara. Images of the aftermath shred of Nepal's military showed the plane's fuselage split apart and charred. According to analysts, Nepal's aviation industry has boomed in recent years, carrying goods and people between hard-to-reach areas as well as local and international trekkers and climbers. Nepal also has some of the world's trickiest runway on land. Many are flanked by snow-capped peaks and approaches that pose a challenge even for accomplished pilots. The Himalayan country has the poor aviation safety records with the spats of deadly lights, plane and helicopter crashes over the decades. Much of this is attributed to insufficient training and maintenance, which are compounded by the country's treacherous geography. The weather can change quickly in the mountains, creating dangerous flying conditions. Taiwan has closed offices and schools and grounded flights as the island braces for a powerful typhoon that is expected to make landfall in a few hours after deluging swaths of the Philippines. Typhoon Gamin is forecast to hit northeastern Taiwan, and President William Chit-Te urged all citizens to put safety first during an emergency briefing. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense said it had put 29,000 soldiers on standby for disaster relief efforts. The typhoon also prompted the cancellation of Taiwan's annual Air Force drill of its eastern coast and ferry services. According to Taiwan's Ministry of Transportation and Communications, almost all domestic flights are cancelled, as well as more than 200 international flights. The typhoon packed winds of 160 kilometers per hour and territorial rains lashed the Philippines and much of Taiwan. At least a dozen landslides and floods over 5 days have displaced 600,000 people across the country. An independent inquiry has found New Zealand's state and faith-based institution presided over by the abuse of some 200,000 children, young people and vulnerable adults over the span of 7 decades. New Zealand's Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in Care said on Wednesday that nearly 1 in 3 people in state or religious care between 1950 and 2019 experienced abuse in what amounted to it called a national disgrace. The report said sexual abuse and commonplace, with abusers grooming those in their care and, in some cases, trafficking survivors to members of the public. It stated that physical abuse was also prevalent across all settings, with some staff going to extremes to inflict as much pain as possible using weapons and electric shocks. It disclosed that the abuse and neglect almost always started from the first day a person was placed in care and often continue for the entirety of their stay. According to the report, Maori and Pacific Islander people were targeted because of their ethnicity, including being prevented from engaging with their cultural heritage and practices. The Royal Commission, which spoke of more than 2,300 survivors of abuse, made more than 130 recommendations, including legislative change to make it easier to Glad to have you back on Foreign Desk. In a bid to bolster support for his war in Gaza Strip, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address the joint houses of the United States Congress. Netanyahu's invite was initiated by the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, whose party is trying to show support for Israel. But several Democratic lawmakers plan to boycott the address over the levies of the U.S. military assistance of Israel, given the huge numbers of Palestinians killed. After addressing Congress, he will meet President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, then have a separate meeting with Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. Netanyahu has said he would present the truth about just war during the address to Congress, in what his first trip to the U.S. since the conflict with Hamas began. Israel's Prime Minister continues to face both international and domestic pressure for his handling of the war, which started nearly 10 months ago. His U.S. trip also follows a ruling by the International Court of the Justice and Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories was illegal. Thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters are also expected to descend on the Washington for what is termed as the Day of Rage. Speaker Johnson has warned against protests inside the House chamber, saying there would be arrests if need be. With that, we've come to the end of our bulletin this afternoon. Before we go, a recap of the top stories. Paramilitary Rapid Support Force has agreed to United States-mediated talks on Sudan war. Germany has outlawed religious organization accused of propagating extremism. Taiwan has closed offices as it braces for powerful typhoon. Thanks for being part of Foreign Desk on Benue Television. I am Susan Ayo. Remain blessed.